The warmth of the holiday season filled the Wilsons' grand white mansion in Newton, a picturesque suburban dream nestled outside Boston. Its pristine lawn, symmetrically placed black-framed windows, and tastefully modest Christmas decorations made it seem like the embodiment of success and stability. But inside, the walls bore witness to the growing fractures within the family, fractures that had deepened for years, largely unnoticed by those who weren't carrying the weight of them. On Christmas morning, Jennifer Wilson sat with her parents and younger sister, Rebecca, in their lavishly decorated living room. Excitement sparkled in Rebecca's eyes as she unwrapped a sleek envelope from their parents. Inside was an itinerary, an all-expenses-paid luxury vacation to the Maldives. Their mother beamed with pride. "You are the pride of our family," she said, her face glowing as she watched Rebecca bask in the extravagant gift. Jennifer reached for her own present, a small, carelessly wrapped box. Peeling away the faded wrapping paper, she found a collection of old, tattered cleaning supplies and a housekeeper's name tag. Her father chuckled. "This is enough for you." Rebecca giggled, barely concealing her amusement. Jennifer sat in silence for a moment, gripping the cheap plastic name tag between her fingers. A bitter chill ran through her, colder than the December wind outside. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply stood, walked upstairs, and packed her bags. No one stopped her. Days later, her phone rang incessantly. "Where are you? Come back," her mother's frantic voice pleaded. Jennifer simply let the call go to voicemail. Weeks passed, and the Wilson mansion remained as pristine as ever, though within its walls, chaos quietly simmered. "Mom, it's time for your blood pressure medication," Jennifer reminded as she stepped through the front door after an exhausting day at work. As the eldest daughter, the burden of managing the household had always fallen on her shoulders. She was a senior manager at a prestigious accounting firm, yet at home, she was nothing more than the family caretaker. Her mother, Margaret, barely looked up from her phone. "Oh yes," she murmured absent-mindedly, her eyes fixated on an Instagram post. It was Rebecca's latest update, another extravagant property sale, another glimpse into the glamorous life of the family's golden child. "I bought dinner ingredients from Whole Foods today," Jennifer continued, setting her bag down. "I made sure to follow Dad's sodium restrictions." "Oh, Jennifer, look at this," Margaret interrupted, eyes gleaming as she turned her phone screen toward her daughter. "Rebecca just closed another wonderful property deal." Jennifer forced a tight-lipped smile. "I see." Without another word, she made her way to the kitchen, rolling up her sleeves to start preparing dinner. Her father, David, had grown increasingly forgetful in recent months, his health deteriorating in ways no one seemed willing to acknowledge. The responsibility of managing their meals, tracking his medical needs, and keeping the house running had quietly become Jennifer's duty. As she diced vegetables, the doorbell rang. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find an unfamiliar man standing on the porch. His expression was serious, his voice curt. "Excuse me, is this the Wilson residence?" Jennifer hesitated before nodding. "Yes, it is. I'm here regarding Miss Rebecca's debt." A familiar, weary ache settled in her chest. Jennifer stepped outside, lowering her voice. "Please, could you keep this for my parents?" she asked, forcing her exhaustion beneath a composed facade. "If you could just tell me the amount." It was the third time this year. She didn't sigh, didn't protest. She simply pulled out her phone and opened her banking app, knowing full well what she would do next. That night, alone in her dimly lit bedroom, Jennifer sat hunched over an Excel spreadsheet. Rows of numbers stared back at her, her parents' property taxes, medical expenses, house maintenance costs, and yet another entry for her sister's gambling debts. Her bank account balance dwindled before her eyes. The weight of it all pressed into her shoulders, suffocating yet familiar. Her phone screen lit up. It was a message from work. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Tomorrow, she would wake up and do it all again. The soft glow of Christmas lights from the neighboring houses cast a gentle warmth against the cold winter night. Jennifer sat at her desk, the faint hum of her office computer filling the silent space around her. Her phone vibrated beside her. "Michael Thompson, are you working late again?" She hesitated for a moment before typing her reply. "Jennifer, yes, as usual." A small smile flickered across her lips. Michael's kindness, however simple, eased a little of the loneliness pressing down on her. She glanced out the window, watching as the neighborhood Christmas decorations twinkled against the dark sky. Homes were filled with laughter, families gathered together. But in the grand Wilson mansion, the air was thick with an unspoken tension masked beneath layers of perfection. By Christmas Eve morning, the house was alive with movement. Snow had gathered in soft mounds outside, glistening in the pale winter sun. Through the tall, grand windows of the Wilson home, the carefully curated Christmas decor was on full display, a picturesque scene of elegance and tradition. Jennifer stood in the living room, putting the finishing touches on the holiday decorations she had painstakingly prepared throughout the past week. The towering 8-foot tree, adorned with classic ornaments, stood with a deliberate, magazine-worthy symmetry, like something out of a boutique display in Greenwich Village. Above the grand fireplace, stockings hung in perfect alignment, some dating back generations, their edges slightly frayed from years of love. Vibrant poinsettias graced every corner, adding warmth to the otherwise cold perfection of the house. From the kitchen, the mouth-watering aroma of honey-baked ham, slow-roasted since the day before, drifted through the air. A green bean casserole waited patiently in the oven, timed perfectly for just the right texture and warmth. The dining table had been set with care, a pristine Irish linen tablecloth, a treasured heirloom from her grandmother, spread smoothly beneath her mother's prized bone china, every setting meticulously arranged. Jennifer took a step back and surveyed her work. "Perfect," she murmured under her breath. For 28 years, she had chased this illusion of perfection, dedicating herself to making Christmas a flawless experience for her family. Yet this year, something felt different. Something tugged at the edges of her thoughts, a quiet unease she couldn't quite place. Softly, the familiar melody of the Christmas song by Nat King Cole began playing from the speaker, a song her father, David, had always cherished. "Jenny, this is wonderful," his voice came from the staircase. She turned to see him descending, dressed far more sharply than usual. A new Brooks Brothers suit hugged his frame, and on his wrist gleamed a rare luxury watch he seldom wore. Her mother, Margaret, had also gone to extra lengths, her makeup more polished, her elegant dress chosen with care. "I wonder if Rebecca will be arriving soon," Margaret mused, her voice laced with anticipation. The words barely left her lips when the distant purr of an engine cut through the stillness. Moments later, a honk echoed through the front drive. "Oh, she must be here." Margaret's voice lit up, and she hurried toward the door, the excitement evident in every step. Jennifer lingered in the kitchen, stirring a sauce she no longer needed to adjust. From the living room came the familiar chorus of delighted greetings, her parents' voices lifting in excitement. "Welcome home, Rebecca. What a lovely car. Is it new?" "Yes," Rebecca replied smoothly, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "It's a celebration for last month's closing. A 2025 Range Rover, top of the line." Jennifer wiped her hands on a towel and slowly turned toward the sound of approaching heels, sharp, deliberate clicks against the polished hardwood floor. Rebecca entered, effortlessly commanding the room. A sleek Hermes Birkin bag dangled from her wrist, her Louboutin heels striking a rhythm as she moved. Her eyes landed on the grand tree. "My, this tree," she mused. "Who decorated it?" "Jennifer did," Margaret answered, pride evident in her tone. "She does it every year." "It's—" Rebecca barely acknowledged the words, already moving on. Jennifer remained silent. The scent of cinnamon and pine, the soft melody of Christmas classics, the golden glow of perfectly arranged lights, it was all the same as every year. And yet, as she stood in the kitchen, listening to the laughter and admiration showered upon her sister, she realized with absolute certainty, this year everything had changed. The flickering Christmas lights cast a soft, golden glow on the freshly fallen snow outside, their warm reflections dancing across the frost-kissed windows of the Wilson mansion. Inside, the house was alive with laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the rich scent of holiday feasts filling the air. Jennifer stood in the kitchen, quietly finishing the final touches on the meal, her presence barely acknowledged amid the excitement centered around her younger sister. Rebecca, poised and glamorous, lounged in the living room, her polished nails tapping against her smartphone screen. She glanced at the Christmas tree, its ornaments perfectly arranged, its beauty undeniable, but antiquated in her eyes. "A bit old-fashioned, don't you think?" she mused, barely sparing it a second glance. "These days, celebrities hire professional stylists." Jennifer said nothing, merely adjusting the lace trim of the tablecloth. "Oh, I must show everyone my achievements this year," Rebecca continued, her voice brimming with self-importance. With a swift motion, she retrieved her tablet, tapping the screen to unveil a slideshow filled with glossy images. One after another, luxurious properties flickered across the display. Penthouse suites overlooking city skylines, sprawling estates bathed in golden sunlight, opulent living spaces that seemed worlds away from the snow-covered home they sat in now. Her parents were spellbound. Incredible. Sales are up 200% from last year. That's our daughter, David Wilson declared, his voice thick with pride. Margaret beamed, clapping her hands together. The top sales in the company. Amazing. Their enthusiastic praises filled the room, their voices growing louder, more exuberant. No one noticed Jennifer, who stood quietly in the kitchen, wiping down the last dish, her movements methodical and unhurried. Rebecca, basking in the admiration, suddenly brightened as if remembering something. Oh, I almost forgot. Next month, I'm taking a 3-week Caribbean cruise. It's time I took a little break from work. Margaret's eyes sparkled with delight. How wonderful! David, always the pragmatic one, frowned slightly. Are you sure about the money? Rebecca laughed, waving off his concern. Of course. I have plenty of savings. Jennifer's hands stilled for just a fraction of a second. The memory of last week's transaction flashed in her mind, the quiet way she had transferred funds to cover her sister's debts, once again bailing her out of trouble. But here and now, no one spoke of that. Margaret clapped her hands once. It's time for presents. The family gathered eagerly around the grand tree, its twinkling lights casting a soft radiance over the polished wooden floor. Jennifer, having placed the final dish onto the dining table, silently joined them, her presence an afterthought. For Rebecca, Margaret announced with excitement, pulling out a large envelope tied with a satin ribbon. Rebecca opened it with a flourish, her manicured fingers sliding the thick paper free. Inside was a ticket, the top-tier luxury suite on the Royal Caribbean cruise. You are our pride and joy, Margaret murmured, embracing her youngest daughter with a glowing smile. Rebecca squealed in delight, immediately lifting her phone to snap photos, documenting the extravagant gift to share with the world. Then, it was Jennifer's turn. David's tone shifted. He reached behind him and retrieved a large paper bag, setting it in front of her with little ceremony. Here's your present, he said, his voice devoid of warmth. Jennifer pulled open the bag, revealing its contents, a broom, a dustpan, a bundle of cleaning rags. At the bottom, nestled among the supplies, was a small name tag. She picked it up, tilting it slightly so the engraved letters caught the light. Housekeeper. A slow chuckle rumbled from her father's chest. This should be enough, right? I even included a name tag, he said, grinning. Rebecca let out a short, amused laugh. Oh, that suits you perfectly. Margaret, in a tone so casual it felt like a simple truth rather than an insult, added, It's fitting, isn't it? For a moment, the room was silent. The warmth from a fireplace flickered, casting long shadows against the walls. Jennifer rose slowly, holding the name tag between her fingers. Carefully, she placed the cleaning supplies onto the table, aligning each item neatly, as though arranging a delicate centerpiece. Thank you, she said. Her voice was steady. Then, without another word, she turned and walked up the stairs. From below, laughter resumed, muffled and distant as she shut the bedroom door behind her. Jennifer moved with quiet efficiency. She pulled open her closet and reached for the suitcase she had packed days ago. Inside, her essentials were already neatly folded: passport, bank documents, certificates, everything she needed for this moment. She had been prepared for this. Outside, fresh snow had begun to fall, dusting the landscape in a soft, unbroken white. Jennifer placed an envelope on her desk. The words scrawled across it were simple. Thank you for 28 years. No one noticed when she stepped through the front door. No one looked up as she pulled her coat tighter around herself and made her way down the frozen driveway. Only the glow of the Christmas tree lights followed her as she climbed into the waiting taxi. She gave the driver her destination and sank into the seat, closing her eyes. The house, with all its laughter and revelry, faded into the distance behind her. Michael held out a small set of keys. The old brick apartment building loomed behind him, its weathered facade standing firm against the chilly Boston air. This is your new home, he said, his voice warm. Jennifer took the keys, turning them over in her palm. The building was 5 stories high, nestled in a quiet neighborhood in Back Bay. It had a timeless charm, historic but well-maintained, with a small courtyard out front dusted with snow. It wasn't grand, but it was solid. It was hers. "Thank you," she murmured. The apartment itself was bright, sunlight streaming through the tall windows that overlooked the city streets. The furniture was sparse, but the emptiness didn't feel cold. It felt peaceful. Michael watched her carefully. "You've handled everything well this past week." Indeed, it had been a long week, transferring hospital records, closing accounts, setting up a new life. Everything had been done quickly, but thoroughly. Jennifer stood by the window, gazing out at the city she would now call home. "My family. They haven't noticed yet," she said. Michael nodded. "They will." And they did. Days passed. Then a week. Then 10 days. The first signs were small: a bill left unpaid, a missing prescription. Then, Margaret collapsed outside the house, having attempted to walk alone to an appointment Jennifer would have once accompanied her to. An ambulance siren split through the quiet morning air. Rebecca was nowhere to be found. Jennifer received the call at dawn. Her mother's voice trembled through the receiver. "Jennifer, please come back." In the background, her father's voice was equally strained. "Please." She sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of their voices settling over her. Then, she hung up. Outside her window, the city was wrapped in a fresh coat of snow. A message from Michael blinked on her screen. "The neighbors want to help. They've been covering the bills. They all understand what you've done for your family." Jennifer exhaled. Perhaps, after all these years, she was finally being seen. And maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning.